Psychology Rose, and today we're going to be talking about unforgiveness part 2, section 5, 6D to 6F of the problem of scale. And this is going to start talking about The Reason to Be Angry Forever by Agnes Callard, and I love this piece, and Joel brought it to my attention, of the natural theologian who recently put out a new book that I highly suggest. And Agnes opens her piece saying that if you have a reason to be angry with me, you will have a reason to be angry with me forever. Yes, if I could make you realize that your reason for being angry was false, if it was based on a misunderstanding, then your anger might go away, but I would accomplish this by showing you that you never had any reason to be angry with me. If you did have a reason, you'd have it forever. So what he's getting at is that if there's a reason to be angry with someone, it's part of facticity, right? That's not going to change. That's not going to go away. So you always have reason to be angry. And I think this is a wonderful example of these kind of issues that rationality, the kind of limits and quality and character of rationality are unveiled. Because really, if you're being rational, you'd never forgive anyone, because, it's just the fact. It's just a fact that they mistreated you. And I think that kind of highlights how, if we're autonomously rational, like this in of itself is going to direct us toward atomization, lacking community, and things like that. And, so what she really wants to ask, if there's always reason to be angry, then what does it mean to reinstigate a relationship or to move back into relationship? Because there's something that's kind of has to be irrational about that. How do we make sense of that? Well, I think it's non-rational, and, that's something we talk about in the context of Benjamin Fontaine, throughout the truism of the rational. And really, I would just say that this is just another example where if we don't have the category of non-rationality, relationships, community, all of these things are going to suffer, because it's basically inevitable, especially when dealing with diversity and pluralism, that people do things to us that feel wrong. And if we only have the options rational or irrational, well, then it's going to be irrational to forgive them, and so we won't. We'll feel, if we do, we'll feel irrational, and maybe we'll feel like we're being taken advantage of, or that we're making a sacrifice that other people don't appreciate, whatever. What ends up happening then is community is extraordinarily fragile. So it's really important here to get, into the question of forgiveness. And so Dr. Callard, she's going to emphasize that anger seems to firstly arise as a way of concerning oneself with the unchangeable fact that some wrong was done. And there's something about the anger that is a result precisely of the unchangeability of the wrongdoing, right? Like, it's a fact that's thrown upon you. You didn't ask about it. And critically, the anger emerges from care. Like, if a stranger hurts us, we may not like it, but it's not likely to really cause this sort of really deep anger. Deep anger seems to be tied to care. So there's something interesting there, because anger, forgiveness, care all seem really connected. And if we care about, so the very fact we get angry, actually, funny enough, can be evidence of love. It can be evidence of care, because otherwise we wouldn't get angry, because we just wouldn't care. Dr. Callard writes, for when someone cares deeply about his or her friend, country, or education, we say that he or she values it. Unlike caring, however, valuing is something that we do only in relation to things that we take to be good. Hence, you value our friendship, but you do not therefore value my betrayal of you. Rather, we say that you care about my betrayal, or that it matters to you, or that it has significance for you. And all of these facts are obtained because our friendship is something you value, and something that matters to you, that you care about, and that has significance for you. So Dr. Callard is using care in an interesting way. Like, we care about being betrayed. That's why we're angry. And the caring about the betrayal is what follows from valuing the relationship. So, there's a way in which anger is a sign of care, not necessarily value, because we don't value being betrayed, but it's a sign of care. So the very fact that anger arises might kind of give us hope for relationship more so than apathy, in a funny way. But then the question becomes, okay, I care that I've been hurt. I care that I've been betrayed, but now it is a fact. So how do I overcome it? Well, something like an absolute choice is required. I definitely think it's a broader conversation. Like, if all we have for thinking moral philosophy is things like utilitarianism, kind of legality and then categories of rationality, if we don't have stuff like value, the virtue ethics of Aristotle, non-rationality and stuff like that, then communities really are in trouble because they're going to be very, very fragile. It's basically only a matter of time before the pain comes in, the hurt happens, that kind of destroys the community. So that's a real problem. But then, of course, the question becomes like, okay, fine. It's clear that I need a non-rational choice to forgive someone and to maintain community. What is the grounds, though, of making that choice? What do I need to see to, have justified reason to engage in an absolute choice or a non-rational choice as such? Well, Agnes is going to put a lot of emphasis on, do you see a desire to restore a relationship? Is a person trying to reach you? If you don't, then there's a lack of care and a lack of value. And so to extend forgiveness, it's kind of funny because the choice to extend forgiveness is the choice to instigate relationship. And that's kind of a key principle. Like, forgiveness as an abstract value where you're looking for like a transcendental grounding for it. Well, you're never going to find that because the very facticity is that they hurt you, right? So forgiveness actually kind of unveils the problems that David Hume talks about with philosophical consciousness. It unveils that you can't have an idea, that it unveils that there are philosophical ideas that cannot ground themselves, and if they can't ground themselves, they kind of eat themselves in different ways. And so, forgiveness can't ground itself. There is no grounding for it. And so if you look for an abstract ground or justification for forgiveness, you will never find it. And in trying will drive you crazy. And I think it's important to realize because I think the question of forgiveness drives a lot of people crazy. The book The Sunflower comes to mind on when the Jewish individual is asking the question, should he forgive a Nazi or not for everything that Nazis did or the evils they did? And it's a fascinating text on the sunflower. And really the kind of idea is that if you look for a justified reason to forgive or not, it eats itself. So I think what we have to do is realize that instead of asking should we forgive as a kind of abstract principle, the question is, do I want to establish relationship or not? That is the question of forgiveness, the choice to engage in relationship or not. And if a relationship is not possible because the person is dead or, they died, maybe they're going to die in 5 minutes, like in the sunflower, the guy's asking on his deathbed. So at most, the individual can extend a relationship for a very short period of time. But that is the question of forgiveness. And if that's not possible, if relationship is not possible, then there is no concrete manifestation of the principle. And so then you really can't forgive because you can't establish a relationship. So I think relationship, the question of extending relationship or not and the possibility of relationship becomes the question of forgiveness. And then it's basically very similar to the paper on trust, on do you extend trust or withdraw trust. You can't earn trust. If you try to earn trust, it becomes a power move. Likewise, you really can't give forgiveness abstractly. And it be meaningful. There has to be the extension of a concrete relationship. And relationships are concrete. I mean, they're kind of metaphysical, but they're also concrete. And so if we ask that question, then we have a way to kind of ground our inquiry on forgiveness so that we don't lose our mind and kind of eat ourselves auto-cannibalistically. And so the question then is, do you want a relationship or not? Is the person extending the possibility of relationship or not? If they are not, then you can't, in a sense, forgive them in any meaningful, concrete way. If they are, then the choice is yours, and you have to choose if you're going to or not. And if you ask questions of, well, am I saying it's okay how they hurt me? Is it okay for me to forgive them, and so on and so forth? Then you easily are setting yourself up to lose your mind because you are looking for a transcendental grounding. And I think that's impossible. There is no transcendental grounding. There's no certainty, right? So the philosophical failure to find a transcendental grounding has bearing on this question of forgiveness. You cannot do it. So there's simply the question, should you extend a relationship or not? And that's it. That's what the question is. And the thing about that is you can't have a relationship with everyone. it's simply not possible due to time energy, as like Dave will talk about. So the question of extending a relationship or not is really not like a moral question. Like you say, oh, well, it's immoral for me not to relate to people. Well, there's practical questions here, right? So you see how we're moving the question from this realm that's sort of psychologically crazy or can drive you nuts. I mean, just all the responses to the book, The Sunflower, kind of show how everyone goes back and forth, back and forth. We can avoid all that and bring us more to the raw, absolute choice of forgiveness on relating or not. And that, I think, also, when we understand just a raw, absolute choice, a choice that is its own absolute grounding, its own absolute justification, and it creates its own horizons of possibility in the choice, that's what we as children have to be capable of if we are to avoid being captured by, say, the self-effacing logic of capital. And that gets us into belonging again, too, when we discuss Nick Land. But the question of forgiveness, if we don't understand what forgiveness is as an absolute choice in the way that we're describing, then I think it's only a matter of time before these communities or absolute communities or commons or different ways to think outside the logic of capital, it's only a matter of time before they fail, because there's going to be hurt and misunderstanding, and if they don't, and then the question of forgiveness might drive them nuts, and people are then going to drift away from the communities where they can face this kind of anxiety and stuff that might drive them crazy. It's just too much, and so then these communities are probably very, very fragile, and it's probably only a matter of time before they fail. There's more to be said on the topic. We have to get into Hegel and how forgiveness seems to be the transition from spirit to religion in the phenomenology, and if indeed the category of religion is what has been overlooked in history, leading to all the problems that we see today, then the question of forgiveness is central to the possibility of a new address, which is ultimately the concern of belonging again too. For more by O.G. Rose, please visit ogrose.com, Twitter, Anchor, Instagram, so on and so forth, and please find the books on Amazon. All purchases and reviews are very much appreciated, and thank you so much for your time.